In this video I wanted to tell you all about a new card deck that we've recently produced called Ayla's Cards of Truth. This is the first deck of what I hope are many, but the first deck that follows my Cards of Truth system that I teach at cardsoftruth.com. So in that system I teach both how to cast cards and also how to do the birth card system that's based on your birth date and birth time. So I wanted to tell you all about the deck, but to make it fun I'm going to teach a bit about the cards while I do it to keep it more interesting. Okay? So this deck, with the Cards of Truth system, we actually read playing cards. But this deck also includes a Major Arcana set for people who like to read Tarot cards with the Major Arcana included. And it also comes with Knights, which are not in playing cards, but which Tarot readers like to use. So it's a playing card deck with a Tarot deck as well. So you can read it as a playing card deck, you can read it as a Tarot deck, whatever you want to do. Personally, I like to just read playing cards, and I'll use the Tarot cards, the Major Arcanas like the Empress and the Emperor and so on. I'll use those for separate readings where I just want to use the Arcana. But in my system, every card has an Arcana quality to it. The Arcana sort of lives in every card and energizes every card as I teach in my system. So I don't like having the Arcana in there. I like having the playing cards, which let me really give good concrete answers, which is what people are usually looking for. And also, if you learn my system, you'll see that every card, every of the playing cards has a lot of deep meanings. It's not just a simple concrete thing. There's a lot of depth to every card. So here I'm going to talk about the 52 cards in the playing deck. And later on I'll talk about the other cards, the Major Arcana cards, okay? So first of all, one thing that's different about this deck compared to most playing decks is that you can read cards upside down if you want to. So you'll see the face cards all have a proper way up. The PIP cards, like the aces and the twos and the threes, they also have an upward pointing thing. So this is what the spades are. They're basically a tree trunk. And like when you cut a tree and you see the circles, it's that kind of idea in the circle of the spade, because spades represent trees actually. So we have a tree kind of connotation to it. And you can see it's easy to see if it's pointing up or down. And on all the PIP cards, you can always see if a spade is pointing up or down by the little point on the top, which is kind of nice if you want to read cards upside down. The hearts too are placed in such a way that you can always tell if they're right side up or not. Whereas on a playing card deck, lots of times they'll put half the hearts pointing one way and half the hearts pointing the other way, so you never know if the hearts are upside down or not on some of the cards. So on our deck we can see all of it. Okay? The same with the clubs. Now the diamonds, it's a little harder to see which way is up, but you can tell because the bigger triangle in the center, there's little triangular section, scallop triangular section, the bigger one goes to the bottom. And we put the bigger one at the bottom because diamonds have to do with mass and the concrete reality, and they represent the earth. And so we want to have the heavier part down as an easy thing to remember, that that's the side that goes down. Now, one of the things we did in this deck is the PIP cards are arranged in the geometrical arrangements that I teach in the class. In the class, I teach lots of ways to understand the numbers of the cards. I use a Sanskrit number system. I use numerology. I use, natural symbols of these phenomena of the cards in nature. And I also use the simple geometrical forms. So based on the geometrical forms that, a certain amount of pips, a certain amount of clubs or hearts or something will make, that indicates a certain energy that we can use to understand the meanings of the numbers. So the PIP cards are all arranged in that numerical order, okay? Or in that geometrical pattern. And one of the really neat things about this is in card reading, the odd cards always have something you come up against. Okay, the even cards are all cards that kind of let you move through things more gracefully and smoothly. You're not coming up against something in the even cards. And what's interesting, if you arrange the cards as if they were a road that you were driving your car through. In the odd cards, when they're arranged in the geometrical patterns, you're going to hit something. So imagine you're driving your car down the middle of the ace of spades. You're going to hit the ace in the middle of the card. You're going to come up against yourself. Aces are always about something new that you come up against. A new feeling, a new spade, something new about yourself. A diamond, a new skill or new opportunity. Something like that. A club, a new idea that you just go, wow. You just literally, it feels like you're driving your car and you just come up right against it. In the twos, when you're driving your car through the middle of the two card, you just drive right through the card. With the three again, you hit something. With the four, you drive through the middle. With the five, you're going to hit something driving through the middle of the card. With the six, I put the six in the wrong place, you can drive through the middle of the card. With the seven, you're going to hit something again. With the eight, you'll drive across the middle through the middle of the card, no problem. With the nine, as you go through the middle of the card, you'll hit something. So it's really interesting that when you arrange them geometrically in the odd cards, which are the ones where you always have to confront something or confront something or deal with something, you come up against this obstacle as you're driving up the middle of the card. Or with aces, it's a bit different. You're just going along and boom, all of a sudden there's something new in your path that you have to pay attention to. That oftentimes indicates a change of direction because of that new thing that just came up in front of you on your path. Nines, of course, are ultimately all divine cards that on an esoteric level let us get in touch with the divine. And that's the end of the road. So the nine also, you hit something where it's the end of the road. There's nowhere else to go once you get to the end of the nine. So the obstacle card that as you drive down the middle of the nine of spades or any nine card that you hit, that's just the final destination, that sign that says you have reached your final destination. There's nowhere else to go. So like with the nine of clubs, you've learned as much as you can about something. There's nothing else to learn with that. Okay, with nine of spades, on the issue you're dealing with about yourself, you learned as much as there is about that, and that's the end of the road for that issue. So it's always an end of the road. With love, the nine of hearts is, all right, you've gone as far with that love as possible. With the nine of diamonds, you've gone as far with developing that talent as you can go. It's always something where you hit the end of the road. Now, the end of the road can be a great place, but it's still, okay, now what? I've done that, end of the road. And ultimately, on the highest level, the end of the road is always the deep spirituality. But in our mundane lives, when those nines come up, it means the end of the road in the context of this. The end of trying to figure something else, the nine of clubs. When do we stop trying to figure something else? When finally it makes sense. Aha, now I can stop thinking about it. So these can be positive cards, the nines, but there's still this idea that, all right, something's stopping you. At the nines, it's usually a stop that you like. In all the other odd cards, other than the aces, as you hit these, these pips that are in the middle of the card, as you try to drive through them, it's always an obstacle or a challenge or something that you have to deal with, and that's why those are the heavier cards. So that's one of the neat things about arranging them geometrically, is that you can just imagine a person taking a trip through the middle of the cards, and it helps you just get a visual image of, okay, this card is a card where they have to confront something or deal with something that's right in front of them. Whereas the other cards are more about gracefully moving the person through life. And then for people who understand the geometry, it's nice to be reminded that these geometrical forms are there for the numbers. So we wanted the pips to be done in that old geometrical fashion. When I first started researching old card decks, I was trying to see if there was a certain way that, they used to put the pips, like a certain order or certain pattern. These days all playing cards pretty much follow the same order of how they put the pips on the cards. But I found that older card decks didn't follow that order. And older card decks didn't really, as the oldest ones we had, which were from like the 14th century, really don't show any order at all. They're just haphazard. One publisher made them like this, another group of people made them like this. There's really no order to the pips. But I wanted an order that made some sense as far as reading was concerned, and the geometry does that. And I also wanted to set them up in a way that you can tell if the cards are right side up. In case you like to read upside down cards, you'll be able to. Okay, So that's pretty much it on the PIP cards. The arrangements of the hearts, the clubs, the diamonds is exactly the same as done here. Now one thing with this deck, with the PIP cards, we really just use two colors, black, red, and white, because that's part of the symbolism of the deck. Okay? The blacks are always selves, things that we want to do. They're the masculine aspects in the cards. The reds are the nurturing, nourishing, feminine aspects in the card. And they're always on a white background to symbolize that whatever is happening is part of the, it's perfect, it's part of the divine plan. It's on a white background. It's in the background. It's happening in the context of the divine plan, which is symbolized by the white background. So we kept all these PIP cards with white backgrounds for that reason. It's actually part of the symbolism. The 10s we did a little differently. The 10s represent the path of a particular suit. So the 10 of spades is the path of the developing self. Or the 10 of hearts is the path of love and fulfillment. The 10 of clubs is the path of knowledge. The 10 of diamonds is the path of developing one's skills and obtaining prosperity. So that path has to do with the circle of the ecliptic, you know, the circle of the zodiac even. The circle of the ecliptic is the zodiac. And so on the cards I wanted to show them as that path. So each card gets each of the 10s gets a quarter arc of the 360 degree circle. And when they're arranged properly, the spades are down here, the hearts here, the clubs here, and the diamonds here, because spades are the first suit, which have to symbolize with the winter solstice that happens December 21st when the sun starts moving north. Then the hearts symbolize the spring suit, the clubs symbolize the summer suit, and the diamonds symbolize the vernal equinox, the fall suit. And there's a reason each of these falls in this position, and so we wanted to show that in the cards, and if you study the cards you'll be able to understand what that reason is. So rather than just putting 10 dots in some way or a circle, we just wanted to do these arcs to let people know that these cards, they represent the path of an entirety. So this is the path of spades, this is the path of hearts, the path of clubs, the path of diamonds, but they're all one circle. They all are part of one path. And that's why there's a natural transition that once spades have become matured, once you become more mature as an individual, your capacity to love and be emotionally fulfilled, which is hearts, becomes becomes stronger. And so then at that point you reap more hearts. You benefit from more hearts in your life. So there's a natural reason that the hearts follow the clubs, or the spades, sorry. So we wanted to show that in the cards. Oh, the backs of the cards have the 52 spread here, the 52 card spread, which is a spread we do with the cards, a special spread that we can actually do to cast the cards, but it's also the spread that sets the foundation of the birth card system. And in that system that we have a certain arrangement where certain cards can fall in certain places, and that diagram is sort of the yantra that we learn all of our card, we get all of our card understanding from. So we thought that was an appropriate symbol to put on the back of the cards. Okay, face cards. The face cards, in my system, the face cards represent different parts of the path. So for instance, the path of the self is spades, and that's symbolized by the 10 of spades, and each of the ace through 9 of spades symbolize a step in the path of the developing self, okay? The path of getting stronger, path of getting healthier, path of becoming more psychologically whole. And within those 9 cards, from the ace to the 9, there's 3 steps. There's the ace, 2, and 3, the 4, 5, and 6, and the 8, 7, 8, and 9. And those forces, those 3 sets are represented by different face cards, meaning different face cards energize different parts of that. So the jacks always energize the ace, 2, and 3. They're the power, the creative power behind the ace, 2, and 3. Okay? The queens are the managing power, the maintaining power of the 4, 5, and 6. That after something's being created, it matures it, it works with it, it makes it the best thing possible. So queens represent that quality of energy. Then the kings represent the destructive aspect, meaning once something's matured, it wanes, breaks down, and transmutes into something else. So that happens at the 7, 8s, and 9s in that process. And those cards are all energized by the kings. So in the card deck, we have, in all the cards except the Jack of Diamonds, the Ace, 2, or 3s are always shown in the Jack cards. The 4, 5, and 6s are shown in the Queen cards, and the 7, 8, and 9s are shown in the King cards to remind us that this King represents the 7, 8, and 9 energy, and the Queen represents the 4, 5, and 6, and so on. So in the Jack, for instance, you can see we have the 1 ace of his body, the 2 aces of his head, and 3 pips above. So 2 circles of his head, 1 of his body, and 3 up above. And that's always shown in some of the cards. So like in the Jack of Hearts, we got 1 of his breast, we have 2 of his face, and 3 that he's gazing towards. So all the cards have this quality of having 3 sets of the diamonds in there, 3 sets of the clubs in there, or something like that. And they're all 1, 2, and 3 for the Jacks, 4, 5, and 6 for the Queens, and 7, 8s, and 9s for the Kings, to remind us that these are the cards that are, these are the powers, the divine powers, the creative, maintaining, and destroying powers that energize the, Ace, 2, and 3, the 4, 5, and 6, or the 7, 8, or 9. Okay? And that's how I like to work with the face cards. And then, of course, face cards always represent people that can be in their lives, but people who have certain purposes depending on those powers. Okay? All right, so I'm going to throw up the Major Arcana deck next, and the Major Arcana part of the deck next. And as I show you those, I'm going to talk a little bit about the artist who did them, because her art style is shown much more in those cards than these PIP cards, which have limited room for artistic expression. Here we have the Major Arcana with the 4 knights that were absent in the earlier part of the video. So as you can see, the artist, Ayla, is very colorful. She uses a lot of fun colors. At the time she did this deck, she was living in Crete and had her artwork in some galleries in Crete. And all of her artwork was really, really colorful like this. I'm going to put a link to her website where you can see other things she's done, and you also can see these cards in much bigger images and learn about more cards. She writes a little paragraph for every card and some of the reasons she did some of the things the way she did them. So check out her site. So very colorful cards and really fun cards. So if you like color, you'll really be attracted to this deck. In my system, I break the Major Arcana into two groups, okay? We have the lunar feminine group, headed by the stars, which is the realm that the moon goes through, and represents the 27 nakshatras that we actually use in Vedic astrology, or the 27 lunar mansions of stars that we use in Vedic astrology. And then we have the masculine sun part of the cards, which is symbolized at the top by the world, which is the zodiac and everything that happens in the concrete world, which is the realm of the masculine side. So we have 2 halves to our psyche. So it's masculine half of our psyche and the feminine half. The stars and all the cards I have here under the stars represent the feminine half of our psyche, the receptive, internalizing, contemplative part of our psyche. And the world card heads up the masculine half of the psyche, Major Arcana cards, which have to do with our activities, the part of our psyche that has confidence in doing, that has strength in doing. So all the external strengths fall into the realm of the world, all the internal strengths fall into the realm of the stars. Okay? So the symbolism in the cards aren't what you normally see, where they're really strongly people-centered. They're more shape and numerically centered. So for instance, in my course I teach that the sun has a square body. So she decided on the sun card to give it a nice square around it, to give it this square body thing. And The sun having a square body is something we get from Vedic astrology principles. The moon has a round body, so the moon has a nice round form, things like that. For instance, the preceptor card, the Hierophant card, as some people like to call it, has to do with the knowledge passed on from generation to generation, either through books or verbally. So she has a book here, is the primary symbol there. So if you're familiar with tarot cards, you might see a hint of some symbolism coming in from those cards, but a lot of it is stuff you have to, appreciate the numerical qualities, like strength and temperance, for instance, are 3 cards. The feminine strength is the strength of temperance, the no power, just the ability to say no, the self-restraint, the ability for temperance, okay? The male 3 card is the strength card, which is external strength. Like typically in the tarot decks, that card will have a guy beating up a lion or somebody fighting a lion. The old tarot cards had a male figure. In the newer tarot cards, unfortunately, they put a female figure, holding the jaws of the lion open. In the original tarot decks, it was a male figure subduing a lion with a club. So it shows the male strength to overcome things. And so she stuck with, instead of doing, figures, she stuck with the geometry and color. So the cards are more geometrically centered, really rich in color, and they're fun cards to use depending on what impact you want to have on your clients. The picturesque cards lots of times will have, the clients will have an impact, like if you toss down the death card and it really is a skeleton, it's a scary looking card. None of the cards here are really scary looking, okay? So if you deal with, if you don't want your clients to have a reaction to the major arcana cards, it's nice to have some that don't have such extreme qualities to them, okay? So they're very abstract representations with a lot of color to the major arcana cards. Like I've said, I don't use major arcana cards in most of my readings. Sometimes I'll use the major arcanas separately for a certain reading, in which case I'll maybe do a 2 or 4 card, and maybe a 5 card reading. Most of the time I like to work just with the standard 52 cards, the complete suit of aces, clubs, hearts, and diamonds, and that's it. And that sounds really weird to a lot of people because you can be so used to using the major arcanas and thinking they're so important. But if you learn how to use the other cards right, you won't miss the major arcanas at all. In fact, you can use the major arcanas as much as you want without even casting them, because every card has a major arcana quality. Like for instance, we've got red 3s and we have black 3s. The black 3s have a strength connotation. The red 3s have a temperance connotation. So you can talk about temperance anytime you see a red 3 come up. Okay? So for instance, our 3 of hearts is the typical card of an affair, right? Of being in love and meeting someone else. So how do you deal with that situation? You have to have temperance. You have to have self-restraint. So you make the right decision, right? You have to restrain yourself from running off with the new person to make sure that that person, you really want to do that. That it's not just an exciting moment that you'll regret. So and maybe with temperance, if you use the temperance, you'll understand in time, I really do belong with that person. I really am ready to leave my spouse or my partner. But you only can come to terms with that if you have restraint at first. You just jump into something foolishly. That's like the 3 of hearts upside down or in a bad position, which shows a person didn't have self-restraint. Okay? Black 3s need external strength. They're cards where we have to use external strength. You have to use a lot of effort. 3 of clubs is, okay, get really, really busy testing things and trying things and seeing what works. It's very active. You have to use the strength of your mind. With spades, you're forced to use the strength of your body and the strength of your will to survive something or to get through something. Okay? So you can apply a major arcana meaning anytime you want in the way I teach the system. And so if you want to go deeper into the psyche of the person, you've got, if you cast a 10-card spread, you have 10 major arcana cards underlying and energizing those other cards that you can tap into if you want to. But sometimes there's a few readings I teach where I like to use just the major arcanas. And lots of times, I personally don't like them to have a big reaction to a particular card. If they pull the death card and it looks really scary, you know. This death card looks, you know, kind of very mellow. It's one of my favorite cards here. I really like the Wheel of Fortune card. It's just a beautiful wheel. And that's all the Wheel of Fortune really needs to be, an attractive wheel. It should look pretty. And a lot of people I find, of all the cards, they like the Wheel of Fortune better than a lot of the other cards. And I think that's appropriate because that's what the Wheel of Fortune is. It's the wheel of change, the luck that brings something you like. It's a fortune. It's a good thing. So it should be an attractive thing. I don't like Wheel of Fortunes that are really scary looking or ugly looking. The older decks, by older I mean like 15th century and so on, they didn't really have scary Wheel of Fortune. Seems like more in the 17th century decks, you know, late 17th century, they started creating decks that the Wheel of Fortune got a little more scary with stuff. But the Wheel of Fortune, when it's right side up, is oh, this is good luck. You know, you're on the path of good stuff, of wealth, abundance, and love. You're going to have a fortunate life with this card for now. And of course, fortune always rises and fortune always falls because that's the nature of life. But that doesn't mean you need to show it in that card. You know, when it comes up in a right side up, you've got good tidings ahead of you. It's not you've got good tidings and then in 6 months you're going to be on the other side of Wheel of Fortune. That depends on your next reading. That depends in your next phase of life. But when the Wheel of Fortune comes up, you're in a beautiful phase of your life. And that's the end of the story. So I don't like it when the Wheel of Fortune cards that have some good stuff coming up and bad stuff coming down and going round and round. It should just be an attractive wheel, a Wheel of Fortune showing, and you know, basically. So the Hermit card is like real interesting. There's this like rainbow shooting out in the center of light. And I go, why is that the Hermit? Well, if you understand that the Hermit are the inspirations and the understandings and the light we receive in deep contemplation and deep meditations, you can see how this card is just really appropriate and really shows this vision of aha, of either aha of God or aha of a concept or something that somebody's contemplating. And that symbolizes what the Hermit is experiencing. It's not the Hermit sitting there thinking, contemplating, meditating. This is the inner experience of the Hermit's consciousness that she showed in that card. So they're very creative, fun cards. One of the things I find is that, you know, everyone has a different taste for what they want in their major arcana cards. So I can't, you know, tell people if they'll like it or not. Everyone has a different opinion about that. But if you like color and abstract art, they're a lot of fun. Okay, now getting to the Knights. The Knights, we got the Knight of Spades, Knights of Hearts, the Knights of Clubs, and the Knight of Diamonds. So again, they're fun, colorful cards with helmeted figures, very abstract. I personally like the Knights a lot. I think they're really fun cards. I never use them. Unfortunately, for people who do tarot cards, you'll want to, but in the Cards of Truth birth system, in the birth card system, the Destiny cards or the Maggie cards as they're called out there, we don't have Knights. We have the other three face cards, we don't have Knights. So I've gotten in the use of not entertaining Knight symbolism in my mind. I used to use Knights when I did tarot. Now, when a Knight shows up, it bothers me, so I kind of quit using Knights. But for people who like Knights, you can throw those in your deck and use them with or without Major Arcana. And that's one of the cool things about this deck. It's a flexible deck. It's designed to be used as 52 playing cards. You can throw Knights in there, or you can throw Major Arcana in there with or without Knights. So it gives you some flexibility. So the websites that you can go to cardsoftruth.com, of course, to get the site, to learn the Cards of Truth system, to get the cards. I also recommend you go to the artist site. She has a lot of stuff on her site beyond just you know, the cards and her artwork. It's also the site where she talks about her readings and things like that. Okay, thank you.